So last time when we talked about Hocus Pocus, I said that I'd follow it up with the polar opposite. So if we have a fun-filled comedy Disney Halloween romp, I think the only way to follow that up is a hell-filled, maybe sort of comedy, cosmic horror, far from Disney adventure. So I think Event Horizon from 1997 will fit the bill perfectly. This was written by Philip Eisner and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. It stars Sam Neill, Jolie Richardson, Lawrence Fishburne, and Richard T. Jones, who I keep wanting to call Richard T. Cooper, but that's his character name. But this was great. I mean, I didn't watch it right near release. I was only about 14 at the time, but I think it was within a few years, and it stuck with me to be one of my favourites. I was debating whether to keep the proper horror theme going, but I felt we needed a palate cleanser, so I've put it off 1 week. But I've loved this from day one, and I do think that it did get a bad rap at the start. Paul W.S. Anderson had come off the very successful Mortal Kombat film, a PG-13 film, might I add, and maybe I'll talk about those films at some point down the line. But he could have gone on to do Annihilation, which may have been a better film. Frankly, any version of it other than what it is might have been a better film. And he also was offered X-Men, but he was like, no, I want to go into horror again. I've done PG-13, I've done the family-friendly stuff. I want to go back to what I love. And I respect that. Unfortunately, it did mean that he had a 10-month window from start to end to get the film out. He had been told by Paramount, we want this out for an August 1997 release date. Can you do that? And he committed to it, unfortunately, I guess. But that's why I think I give it a lot of a pass in some areas. Paramount later were very apologetic about this. They'd asked him to trim out 30 minutes of the film or thereabouts. And, obviously that still had to be done in that tight time window. So he had to rush some edits through. The effects had to be done, obviously, with those edits in place and everything like that as well, which is why I think some of them do look a bit terrible, I think is the nicest word I'm going to use. But again, that time crunch. But they did feel bad. They wanted to allow him, years later, they said, we should have let you have a proper release, really spend your time on it and make the film you wanted to make. Go and find the footage and make a director's cut if you so wish. Unfortunately, much of that footage hadn't been archived correctly. There are a few scenes that exist on subsequent Blu-ray releases and the like, but most of the film was unwatchable and just destroyed because it wasn't archived correctly. And that's sad. There are scenes of this film that we will never, ever see. But like I say, this was one of those that I think was very formative to me. My interests in cosmic horror started here. I hadn't really read any Lovecraft until well into my late 20s, I think, at the earliest. This was my first idea of cosmic horror, with Sam Neill, ironically. And that really, I think, informed what I liked going forward. There's a lot to love here. There is a lot of passion to this project. There's a lot that clearly wanted to be told. I think the fact that Philip Eisner had a family tragedy before doing this really made its way into this. I think the Peters thing is probably the closest, that guilt of not being there for her son probably links in. I might be projecting a bit there, I apologise if that's the case, but I do think that there's a lot that, was cathartic about this for Eisner. But the fact that the entity, the ship, the hell itself, whatever you believe is behind all of this, some kind of cosmic old one, why not? Knows about all their guilts and fears, I think makes this what it is. Obviously, like I say, we have the Peters situation. Miller's is very, very interesting because not only is it his past guilt over the bosun, but what's going on with the crew around him is further to that. That's a very interesting idea, the fact that he can't get away from any kind of guilt about his crew because whether it's the past or present, stuff's going on right now. Smitty's probably got the easiest death, or the nicest death, as awful as that sounds, because it's probably going to be instantaneous. Jason Isaacs' character, DJ, that was quite interesting because it's not really super clear what his issues and trauma, ironically, are, but apparently the cast were allowed to develop the backstory a little of their characters. And part of that was that he'd had surgery and had this weird idea about it, this kind of fear. So him being operated on and opened up, as well as obviously being an EMT kind of thing himself, granted, it was like, again, a double thing. But one of the best foreshadows, I think, of any of the guilts and what have you, is Weir's early on. We see him, sort of having his shave, and he's holding a straight razor and looks over to the bath with that look of, I'm combining these things in my head and I don't want to, because that's what happened to Claire. Because again, he couldn't be there for her. It's all about the guilt here. It's not about, what scares them most. It's not about what, unsettles them in most cases. It is about what do they feel bad about? What could they have done something about, as far as they're aware anyway. Miller himself knows that he couldn't do anything. He had to really weigh up what the best course of action was, and the best course of action was to let the bosun, unfortunately, go. But knowing it, being, sort of logically and rationally aware of it, does not remove those feelings of guilt. As someone with a mood disorder, I know full well that logic and emotion don't always make the same conclusions. But this film does have a few light moments, and that's why I wanted to name Richard T. Jones, in the initial cast list that I do, because for the most part it's in the early parts of the film, which makes sense. Everyone's quite light, and it's quite a light start to the film, as these tend to be. But there's that moment later on when he's jettisoned off. Yes! Here I come, motherfucker! That whole moment just gives us a breather. And Richard T. Jones is great for this. I've seen him in a lot of other stuff, and he does a lot of serious roles. But he just makes that moment work so well. But of course, this film, it does lean very heavily on religious imagery. We consider the scene, the one, as the hell orgy. But there's moments that, sort of reinforce that. I mean, the hell orgy itself is very much, Hieronymus Bosch and that kind of style of art inspired. That very detailed look of what hell could be like. It's very much in that way. But even the Doors to Engineering, before they get into that weird meat grinder, it almost looks like religious seals, sort of around the entryway itself. There's a very religious iconography thread throughout this. The Event Horizon itself, with the long corridors, almost feels cathedral-like. Almost feels like a weird sort of place of worship that's been desecrated by the thing that most people probably think is the opposite of what they worship. And I love that. It's so much here is well done and well thought out, and again, with the time and the budget they had, what they managed to accomplish, I think deserves praise. This is cosmic horror done well, and I love it. So there's a few small things I want to talk about before we end, and most of them revolve around the uniforms for some reason. But I think a lot of us are aware of the flags on the jumpsuits, but for those who don't know, or for those who need a reminder, the British members of the crew have an expanded EU flag. It's double layered, I think with 22 stars on. Of course, the British members wouldn't be wearing that anymore in the future, but we didn't know that back then, did we? We didn't know we'd make a very silly decision, but let's not get too political. But one of the great moments that's attributed to Sam Neill is the incorporation of the Aboriginal flag instead of the Union flag on the Australian one. A nice touch, obviously the idea that the world would be a lot cooler and just be like, no, it was their land first, so let's recognise it. I love that. Also, Weir's jumpsuit, whilst we're on that specifically, has IASA. Now, it doesn't seem to exist now, and I'm just drawing a conclusion, but NASA is the National Aeronautical and Space Administration. I think I've said that right. So, I think this is meant to be International Aeronautical Space Administration. Again, even though they've got their own country flags, or, locality flags, they do still pull together, because we now know that we can colonise the moon, although that should have happened 5 years ago. It's showing the idea that maybe humanity is coming together better. There is a hopeful message somewhere in this film, strangely enough. But also, they also seem to be wearing these t-shirts that have their personal details written on. Now, I'm either going to correct myself and put up a still of it right here, or I'm going to be right in the fact that I don't recall any dog tags in the early scenes when they're in the grav couches. That's completely shot that out of the water, and maybe it's just an extra layer of potential identification and maybe medical advice on there, I don't know. But the last thing I want to mention is a bit twofold. There's actually a recording of me on a song that I was part of years ago, where I do the Liberate Tutemet ex Inferis. It's a thing that I'm known for. It's why in a recent video I was tasked with doing a piece in Latin. But I found it interesting that Kilpack actually says, well, he says it wrong, he says Ave atque vale, but V's are U's in Latin, so it's more Ave atque vale. And then Liberate Tutemet ex Inferis. So this is why he's speaking in Latin. It isn't because it's hell and Latin is associated with religious iconography, etc. It's because he already knows Latin. And he's like, the demonic part that's taken him over thinks it's funny to make a mockery of that. So yeah, Event Horizon is so great. There's so many moments, and it's one of those, I say it with a lot of films that I like, you can tell that it's put together with love and care by those who wanted to make it. And that will show regardless of any awful CG or whatever. And if you are interested at all in cosmic horror, in religious horror, in people being stranded in space, that kind of stuff, do yourself a favour, watch it. Don't say I didn't warn you about the hell orgy scene though. It's quite shocking on a first view, and it doesn't really get tons better. But that's all I want to say about Event Horizon. I love it and always will, and I hope you'll join me next time for whatever we cover then. But until then, as always, thank you for watching and take care.
Liberate